In this video interview at IBC 2012, I'm speaking with Nigel Walley, who's the MD at Decipher. Hello, Nigel.
Hello.
Now, you've just finished one of your quarterly projects, looking at second screen research project. I mean, it's a huge subject. So, I mean, just to begin, I suppose, what kind of second screen apps are we likely to see? Because we've had people like Shazam at this conference. They would like, I think, to be the umbrella app that broadcasters go within, and then broadcasters can have their own app. They could do an overall app themselves or a show-based app. I mean, how is this likely to pan out?
I think your comment is right. It's an unbelievably confused landscape. There are lots and lots of apps out there, and there are lots of people making them and delivering, quite often either competing or at least not quite complementing each other. Part of the rationale for the project we did was just to audit the market, just to first off look at all the apps that are out there. Secondly, to put some kind of framework over it. Can we make sense of what's being made? And we came back to a TV value chain. You have to, I mean, the way to understand it is to go back and say, actually, hang on a sec, in TV, there are people who make TV programs, there are broadcasters who bring them together. Those broadcasters themselves are aggregated through platforms. And then at the front end, there are device manufacturers. So you can have a program, and we looked at, for example, the Channel 4 show, Food Fight. There was an app for the show made by the program maker. The channel made an app. At the time, the platforms didn't have apps, but Anthony Rose's Z-Box had arrived, so it acted as a kind of a third party. And so there were at least 3 apps you could use in conjunction with that show, and it wasn't clear to the consumer which one they were meant to use. Following on that, in the middle of the research, we saw ITV have Britain's Got Talent. And in Britain's Got Talent, there was a program app made in partnership between the program maker and the broadcaster. So that was reasonably clear. Anthony Rose's team did a feature on it, so you could use Z-Box, which had some information in it, but no interactivity. And then at the same time, ITV did a deal with Shazam. So right in the middle of the show, when you were using the ITV app, there was an ad on the screen to say, go and use this other app. So at the moment, it's not as if there is a clear and rational framework within which this stuff is being made. It's reasonable to expect there will be apps around certain programs in the future, but not all programs. Most programs don't need apps, and that's the thing we need to establish first of all. But there's quite a few shows where they can deliver value, and that's great. But there's another kind of app which is developing, which is the remote control app. So Z-Box is an early precursor of the kind of thing we were expecting all the platforms to launch. In the UK, Sky have come out with their Z-Box equivalent. They obviously own part of Z-Box, so some of the functionality will be built into it. But I think we can make a reasonable expectation that most significant platforms will have a companion app which operates as an EPG, a suggestions point, a recommendations area, where most of the TV management choices will be made.
Yeah, FreeSat just announced theirs, didn't they, last
exactly.
week for free time?
Yeah, so FreeSat have got a new box on the market, and they're announcing that they're building a companion app. YouView clearly is a new box, and they've announced there's going to be a companion app. It's interesting for Anthony Rose's organisation, as a commercial third party who wants to create one of these apps, whether they can actually compete in the market. It's likely, we think, that the most logical app you will use is the one provided by your platform, because they will have the ability to most closely integrate the app with the proposition as it comes through the box. What's really interesting is the blurring between the platforms and the broadcasters. Who can make an app which is compelling? Because Anthony has pioneered this idea that the EPG can have so much data in it that it actually becomes part of the content. If you wrap into the program metadata, social media, recommendations, links to advertisers, you create a bundle of content which feels like a block of content in itself, where in fact actually if you scrape the surface of Z-Box, in reality it's just support data. A program maker like ITV would say, yeah, Anthony can never integrate with the content. If you want an app to fully integrate with the TV show, if you want to have voting, interactivity, the ability to have two-way interaction with the makers of the show, a platform will never have the ability to do that because they don't make the content. So ITV will claim that for certain shows, X Factor and Britain's Got Talent, only they will create an app which is worth having. So, but then the difficulty comes in, how do I know that Britain's Got Talent has got an app? It's likely, we think, that the Z-Boxes and the Sky Virgin TiVo versions of Z-Box will become gatekeepers, not necessarily umbrella apps. They're the gatekeeper app. So I'll be on, when I'm watching television, on my Sky box, I'll have my Sky app open on my iPad. up will come Britain's Got Talent, because I'm watching ITV on the telly. The iPad app from Sky will be the most logical place for ITV to advertise, to tell me there's an app for that show. So it's likely that one of the interesting outcomes from this market is that the broadcasters will have to pay the platforms for advertising rights to advertise their own app through the EPG. So the platform apps become these incredibly data-rich gateway apps through which you can choose to experience the deeper interaction that's offered by a program app.
I can see the logic in that, but you would think that the broadcasters might try and fight that, because they've had all these years where they've been on the platform. I mean, they kind of tolerate platforms, don't they? But they love the independence that being a channel provides. I mean, this is a chance for them really to try and strengthen their own brand, surely.
Yes, it's the perennial battle that the broadcasters and the platforms are having. Who has first contact with the consumer? And the truth is, the broadcast industry has never had contact with the consumer. You hear these debates from the broadcasters saying that the platforms have disintermediated them. They've taken their consumer away from them. The truth is, the broadcasters never had it. The broadcasters have always been a shouting organisation. They stand on the top of a big hill and they shout, which has always worked. You know, that's the model that worked. The broadcasters, the platforms, took a different approach. They went and knocked on your door and had a conversation with you and said, do you want me to bring you that stuff that's from the top of the hill? So they've always had customers. The broadcasters never had. They do feel, however, that these apps will give them the chance to get right out to the viewer and make connections with them, which is probably true, but it's hard to avoid the fact that in a Sky home, Sky have this incredible position in control of the customer. A broadcaster can tell me they got an app, but you have this weird self-selecting market thing going on, where the people who are most likely to want to use a Britain's Got Talent smart app on a phone or an iPad are probably the same people who've got their platform app open. They are the people most likely to use an app around TV. So actually, it's a self-selecting subset of the total TV audience they're fighting for. So it will be much more likely they will work out a partnership and work out how to do it.
Okay, I mean, have you had time to sort of look at it from a consumer perspective yet? I mean, what they would want? I mean, presumably they want simplicity, we all know that, but, you know, do they care which brand is the prominent brand for them?
Rather than starting with brand, it's probably easy to start with functionality. And a slightly off-the-wall approach to this, because we like to put the discussion about apps into an evolutionary timeline that starts with the on-off button on the television set. And if you look at the way that that's evolved, the big leap forward was to remote controls. TV set had a remote control. Then the next evolutionary step was the TV platform came along. So suddenly in my house I've got a Sky remote control and a TV screen remote control. Sky get over that by making sure that their Sky remote can actually do volume up and down and TV off. So at that point I lose the TV remote. Suddenly this app comes along that Sky want me to use that includes some of the EPG stuff from the screen. The truth is they have currently forgotten some of the key functionality, and the things that people actually want right now from an app like the Sky app or the ZBox app are things like volume up and down. So one of the things we're saying to them is, if you really want me to throw the Sky remote control away and use this amazing app, actually there's a couple of things that were on that I still need in here. I need volume up and down, TV on and off, put that in there, and then it's more likely then I'll do the other stuff. Because actually that's the thing that that's the remote functionality that people use most around a TV, is volume up and down. So you can see over time that the remote control app will take its place at the head of this kind of evolutionary path from having to stand up and go and press the button, through to fighting with remote controls, through to it going into software.
Okay. I mean, on that remote control point, there's companies like Ruido who make a sort of a compelling argument that you'll always need the remote. I mean, do you think... Where do you sit in terms of, do we all migrate to a smartphone as our natural remote control, or do we still need a plastic box in our hands?
Being a consultant, can I equivocate and take a middle ground?
Of course you can, yeah.
Because I believe in the power of a smart remote control on a smart device. The however I'm about to throw you is that I think it's likely that we will end up with a dedicated device to do it. We're already considering, and clearly we're not a normal family in my house, we're already considering having one of the small iPads when they get launched dedicated to the lounge. So rather than being a person's iPad, it's going to be the lounge's iPad. We'll have the Sky remote stuff on it. So it will act in the way as the remote control. It just happens to be a smart screen one. The great thing about it is that it gives the platform flexibility to change. Because one of the double-edged swords of a remote control from a paid platform like the Sky remote is, one, its recognisability and its simplicity. The trouble is, once they've made it once, they can't change the buttons. And so the Sky Remote, in a way, is something that's hampering Sky innovating, or a paid platform innovating, because they're stuck with those buttons they designed 7 years ago. Whereas on a smart device, what you can end up with is something where they change the buttons with every new release in response to consumer research. So it's likely, I think, we will end up with this, with smart devices taking over from the remote control. However, you will probably get one given away for free with your Skybox. Your Skybox will arrive with a cheap tablet as the remote control.
Wow. But we hear about them trying to get set-top boxes off their balance sheet, so why on earth would they want to start supplying a sort of a miniature smartphone?
Yeah. Well, it's likely that your new Samsung telly will have a tablet with it in a few years' time. It'll come as a companion piece to it.
Wow.
So, because that's just the nature of things. They will be so absurdly cheap that instead of pulling out a remote control, you'll be pulling out something. And if you think about the form factor, the amount of plastic that goes into both, if you get a remote control from a telly and a small tablet, 80% of it is the same stuff. Plastic, glass, power, batteries, all those kind of things. It's the same thing. So it's likely one will use out the other.
Okay. Well, just very finally, and in just a few words, how big an impact do you think Second Screen will have? I mean, is it just another app that just looks nice, or is it a fundamental shift in TV viewing behaviour, do you think, coming up?
I do worry that the Second Screen phenomenon is being overhyped. I think that for a small number of shows, it's a fundamental addition to the viewing experience. For a large amount of shows, it's an irrelevance. And my concern is that the TV industry is grasping it like a lifebelt. I personally think it's really interesting, and there's a couple of shows in a month that I use Second Screen for and get a lot of value out of it. So I have to be careful. However, those comments are about program apps, and I think what we have to distinguish very carefully between is program-related synchronous apps and platform management apps. And I think the platform management apps are absolutely here to stay. We make a distinction between in the lounge and out, so play shifted. And Sky have got Sky Plus for in the lounge, Sky Go for out. Those things will probably come together. There will be this kind of all-encompassing Sky app that knows where I am. If I'm in the lounge, it will be giving me a remote control functionality for the TV in front of me. If I'm out of the house, it will be giving me Sky Go access to movies and sport. So we have to be careful that there isn't a blanket answer for Second Screen. We have to pick it apart and say, actually, program apps, limited, interesting, but not the lifesaver for TV. Platform apps, yes. The one that's in the middle there is channel apps. Do I need an ITV app? If I've got good program apps for Xbox and X Factor and Britain's Got Talent, and I've got a good Sky app, is there a market in the middle there for a broadcast app? I'm not sure what value that adds in the mix, and that's a challenge.
Okay, so still plenty to play out, and very early days. Well, thanks very much, Nigel, for telling us about what you've learned, and always nice to talk to you.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Pleasure.